Wednesday, September 12th, 2012, 1:02 a.m. I still haven't gone to bed. I started doing some research on public corruption, and then I bumped into this, and I want to read this, and I'll provide in my comment for anybody interested. The State of New Jersey Commission of Investigation in 2009 provided a report, a comprehensive report on the issues and challenges that they are facing with maintaining the 12 or 14 prisons within the state of New Jersey, about gangs and the involvement of gangs within the prison population and the gangs stretching out outwards. I'm going to read it. It's in my comment. It'll be in the description. I'm sorry. It's titled "Gangland Behind Bars: How and Why Organized Criminal Street Gangs Thrive in New Jersey's Prisons. What can be done about it?" May 2009. State of New Jersey Commission of Investigation. Gangland Behind Bars. Okay, done about it. This is the organization. I guess this is addressed to the governor of John Corzine, the president and members of the Senate, and the speakers and members of the General Assembly. I'm planning to run for the General Assembly, so all of these little things are going to be very important for me, because I'm almost certain this is the year 2012. This report was published in the year 2009, and what they need as a government agency to address the growing concerns of their own interests and what they do. I'm sure the state legislation failed to address their needs. The State Commission investigation, person to NJSA 52, semicolon 9M, herewith formally submit the final report of findings and recommendations stemming from an investigation of organized criminal street gangs in New Jersey's prison system, respectively. The chair, the commissioner, and the commissioner, Carrie Edwards, Patrick Hobbs, Joseph Marinello Jr., and during her tenure, Commissioner Kathy Flerker took lead role in the conduct and completion of this inquiry, and thus is also a signatory to this report. In March 2009, she was succeeded by Commissioner Robert J. Martin, former Commissioner Kathy Flicker. And then table of contents, executive summary 1, introduction 8, key findings 14, inmate financial transactions 14, inmate communications 20, security lapses, contraband 31, inadequate gang identification and intelligence 35, systematic vulnerabilities in DOC, Department of Corrections, personal practices 39, dysfunctional investigative apparatus 47, referral and recommendations 51, Appendix A1. Executive summary. Criminal street gangs have long been recognized as a threat not just to society at large, but to safety, security, and integrity of the prison system. Over the years, New Jersey's Department of Corrections, DOC, has taken steps aimed at managing and containing that threat as it impinges upon the 14 prison institutions for which the agency is responsible statewide. Among other things, DOC established a process to identify gang members entering the system and serving time. It maintains a program designed to fracture gang hierarchies by isolating known gang core members from the general prison population, targeting them for special rehabilitative attention. It monitors inmate telephone calls, examines their mail, and regularly searches for and confiscates contraband. Custody officers, moreover, receive a measure of gang awareness training, and internal investigations are conducted to gather intelligence on and to curtail suspected gang activity. Despite these and other efforts, however, the impact of the gang threats on DOC's turf has worsened over time. Indeed, in certain critical respects, the threat has been actualized in ways that undermine the agency's mission, an inherently difficult and challenging mission under the best circumstances, requiring the maintenance of a security custodial environment while simultaneously serving as a platform to facilitate the presumed rehabilitation and eventual re-entry into society of thousands of convicted felons. The State Commission of Investigation has found that burgeoning numbers of gang-affiliated inmates today increasingly exploit systematic weaknesses to organize and thrive inside prison walls. They communicate widely with cohorts both inside and outside of prison via cellular phones and other means, and they readily secure, use, and deal in contraband, including illegal narcotics. They carry out illicit financial transactions and launder money through an official system of inmate accounts. They extort fellow inmates and their families. They corrupt corrections personnel, including custody officers and civilian staff. Together, these circumstances enable them to nurture and advance violent criminal enterprises while incarcerated, and their ability to operate in this fashion raises the specter of greater violence, not just inside the prisons, but once they return to the outside world. This document presents the results of an unprecedented investigation pursued by the SCI from the streets of New Jersey's cities and suburbs into cell blocks of the state's largest correctional institutions. It incorporates a comprehensive summary of findings and a detailed set of recommendations for systematic reform and is based upon a thorough investigative record developed over the course of more than 2 years, including interviews and sworn testimony from scores of witnesses, field surveillances, data, and accounting analysis. The examination of thousands of pages of documentary material obtained from DOC and other official and unofficial sources. Thousands of pages, Jesus. On November 18, 2008, the Commission conducted a day-long public hearing on these matters. A digital transcript of that hearing is attached herein, along with the appendix of documentary exhibits presented during the proceedings. The Commission undertook this investigation pursuant to its unique statutory responsibility to ascertain whether the laws of the state are being faithfully executed and effectively enforced, and to inform the governor, the legislature, and the general public with regard to all facets of this societal scourge known as organized crime. Investigative and analytical leader in this area since its inception as an independent fact-finding agency 4 decades ago, the SCI in 1993 produced the first authoritative statewide assessment of criminal street gangs in New Jersey. A decade later, in 2004, the Commission reported that these violent entities had become so thoroughly structured and entrenched and had proliferated to such an extent as to become the stark new face of organized crime. In response to this paradigm shift, criminal justice authorities at the federal, state, and local levels have taken sustained action, arresting, prosecuting, and jailing gang felons in record numbers, a tribute to successful law enforcement. But with this success have come new and difficult challenges and pressures. The growing influx of convicted gang members, i.e. those at the core of the threat, has transformed the prison system into a breeding ground for gang-related criminal activity at a level far more expansive than ever before. One senior DOC official testified that as many as half of all inmates housed in New Jersey state prisons today may be involved in some way with criminal street gang. As many as half, okay, that's bad. Not just by choice as members, associates, or recruits, but via other means, such as by the force of extortionate threats. In many, if not most, such instances, the gang at the center of it all is the United Blood Nation, aka the Bloods, which has evolved to become the fastest growing, most dominant criminal enterprise of its kind, both on the streets and in the prisons of this state, that New Jersey's correctional system has absorbed this deep and violent gang flood thus far, without a catastrophic incident, especially in an era of severe budgetary stress. It is a more testament to hard work and circumstance, to ingenuity and sheer luck, than to the supposed structural soundness and viability of the system as a whole. Those who manage and staff these institutions go to work every day in what amounts to a defensive holding action against worsening odds, and all too often as they reach for practical tools to get the job done properly, they find the system lacking. This is why the Commission, based on the findings in this investigation, recommends sweeping administrative and statutory reforms on multiple levels. Fundamentally, new procedures should be established to enable DOC to acquire far more comprehensive understanding of the size and shape of the gang threat as it enters and takes residence under the agency's custody, by focusing only on those individuals whose behavior and/or physical appearances fit DOC's criteria indicating actual membership in a gang. Current identification process and the lack of adequate intelligence system hampers the department's ability to measure and respond to the full scope of gang-related activity throughout the prison system. By extension, DOC should play an internal role in efforts to ensure that the state's entire law enforcement community works from the same page, utilizing uniform and effective methods for identifying gang elements and for gathering and sharing gang-related intelligence information. Immediate steps must also be taken to address real and potential security lapses in the day-to-day operations of New Jersey's prisons, particularly with regard to effectively safeguarding and scrutinizing the various points of entry to these institutions by prison employees, vendors, and visitors. Further, the inmate financial account system should be overhauled with limits placed on the amount of money that can be deposited and held in these accounts and the number of transactions inmates can make. Inmate financial account system. They have accounts. So inmates have accounts when they're in bank. Like they have a bank account when they're in jail. Also, an effective oversight mechanism should be established to trace all activity involving these accounts to ensure the legitimacy of their use. In addition, new and effective procedures coupled with appropriate state-of-the-art technological improvements should be put in place to detect and root out cell phones and other prison contraband and to defeat the ability of inmates to communicate among themselves with confederates on the street in furtherance of criminal activity. Finally, in recognition of vital frontline role played by DOC personnel in this dangerous arena, the agency's personal recruitment, training, deployment, and disciplinary procedures should be revamped, strengthened, and its internal investigative apparatus restructured and fortified to provide for timely, more informed, and better coordinated gang intelligence. Cognizant of the multidimensional complexity of these matters, the Commission took steps to ensure that the crafting of its recommendations did not occur in an isolated, unilateral fashion. Prominent individuals and organizations familiar with conditions and trends in New Jersey's correctional system were consulted for their perspectives, concerns, and suggestions in the context of both the history of the system and its current state of affairs vis-a-vis the pressures brought to bear by elements of organized criminal street gangs. In that regard, the Commission is grateful to the many law enforcement officials and public servants who constructively offered their expertise, particularly DOC staff. Although DOC ultimately declined to participate in the last fall's public hearing on these matters, its management and staff nonetheless deserves recognition for the high-level behind-the-scene cooperation afforded by the agency over many months. Indeed, the core of this investigative record consists of thousands of documents provided by DOC. Meanwhile, DOC management officials and investigators, as well as the union representatives for correctional personnel, met and consulted extensively with Commission staff both during the fact-finding phase of the investigation and again in recent months as recommendations were developed at several junctures coincident with the Commission's inquiry. DOC undertook limited internal operational improvements on its initiative. As to the future, the Commission recognizes the difficulty of mounting a comprehensive reform effort amid seriously adverse fiscal conditions, particularly given that some of these recommendations undoubtedly will require resources beyond DOC's current operating budget. In that context, however, it should also be noted that the Commission went to great lengths to craft and target key elements of these recommendations, such as they could be carried out at minimal cost. Whatever the strategy going forward, the record is clear, convincing, and urgent. Organized crime as we know it in the 21st century has established itself within the very walls of our state prisons, and that is an intolerable situation for everyone with a legitimate interest in the safe and proper functioning of the system. Law-abiding citizens whose tax dollars support these institutions must have confidence that when criminals are apprehended, prosecuted, and incarcerated, those individuals are removed from society and placed in secure custody for the duration of their sentence, not provided with access to something resembling a branch office for the recruitment of new members and furtherance of criminal enterprise. Dedicated personnel who staff these institutions deserve to have every reasonable means at their disposal to retain control and to prevent an already hazardous work environment from deteriorating still further. And the inmates who are housed in these institutions, those who want no part of gang life, who are serving time, paying their debt to society, and looking to take advantage of a legitimate rehabilitation and reentry programs, are entitled to protection against gang-inspired recruitment, violence, and outright physical harm. In the final analysis of the correctional system can never hope to live up to the positive, pragmatic, and rehabilitative mission embodied by the name, as long as the cell blocks of these institutions remain so heavily subject to the intrusive and disruptive influence of organized criminal street gangs. For its part, the Commission intends for this report to be the first in a series focusing on systematic issues involving criminal street gangs and law enforcement's response to them. The growth and proliferation of these violent entities and the threat that they collectively represent to the public peace, safe, and justice together constitute the most serious crime issues in New Jersey today. Introduction. Violent criminal street gangs have turned elements of New Jersey's prison system to their advantage against the backdrop of broader trends that provide essential context for the findings of this investigation. Historically, and to varying degrees, gangs have always had a presence behind bars. Indeed, some segments of today's most notorious gangs, notably the Bloods, the Latin Kings, and an association, NITA, actually were born and bred inside prison walls, established there primarily as self-protective organizations by inmates of common ethnic, racial, or other background. Only in recent years, however, has that presence acquired a large and sustained sophisticated grounding in which the prison itself, as if equipped with a revolving door, serves as both a repository for gang activity behind bars as well as the base for the furtherance of violent criminal enterprises outside on the streets. When the SCI undertook New Jersey's first statewide examination of gangs and gang-related in the early 1900s, it revealed what subsequent events would show to have been the leading edge of gathering storm. Detailed surveys conducted by Commission at that time turned up evidence of more than 700 gangs scattered around the state, primarily in the poor urban neighborhoods, but also extending outward into suburban communities. Though generally small, fragmented, and disparate, these gangs nonetheless were engaged in a variety of violent criminal activities fueled by an increasingly lucrative trade in illicit drugs. Meanwhile, the gang population within juvenile detention facilities and county jails was found to be on the rise, and the State Department of Corrections (DOC) reported incidents in which street gang members appeared to have been directly by cohorts within the adult prison system to commit armed robberies and other criminal acts. This phenomenon, DOC stated at the time, should be a paramount concern to all law enforcement. Just one moment, please. This is quite a heavy read for anybody still listening to this. It's quite interesting though. And there's a lot here. I wish I had a printer. This is an important resource for my second and third aspect of my office objective. Violent offenders, second two-strike policy, second time, life sentence, no parole. Rape-related offenses, first strike, life, no parole. I'm gonna just save it as this. You can continue reading it on your own. This is pretty interesting though. I left off, I guess, at page 9. I need to go to bed though, seriously. This is pretty important though. I didn't know it was that bad. Like, I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad based on so far what I've read. If it's almost 50% of the population involved with gangs. In my mind, I thought it was 20%. Okay.